Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our September AFP program meeting. My name is Chris Head, and I am the president of the association this year. And I welcome you to a really great program. I'm actually excited about this program. Usually we have several chapter announcements, but I think where everybody's up to date on what we're doing, the next big event that our chapter is hosting is National Philanthropy Day in November. And I'm hopeful you guys are following along on our social media to check out what's going on with that event and to buy your tickets for both the Professional Development Day on that Thursday and then the lunch on that Friday. So I welcome you guys to do that and follow along. I'm going to jump right into it. We have a really great program, really dynamic speaker today. Dave Christopher from AMPT is with us, and he's going to tell us how to tell our story. So I've worked with Dave on the CNPE fundraising school, and he did this program in the spring for the school. So we're lucky to have him here today to do the program for us as a chapter. So Dave, I'm just turning it right over to you.
So let me get to my position so that I can be seen by the camera. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Thank you guys for inviting me. My name is Dave Christopher Sr. I'm the executive director and founder of AMPT. That stands for the Academy of Music Production, Education, and Development. We started our program as a music program for kids, a free music program for kids 8 to 18 years old. And in the process of that, we realized that, kids don't live alone. So what we understood was kids in poverty live with parents that are in poverty. And so if we're going to do our job, then we need to also think about those parents. So with that in mind, we launched the AMP Family Learning Program and Technology Workforce Development Program because we wanted to give parents jobs in jobs that paid a living wage or above a living wage. And technology, as you know, starts at a living wage. So we started that program. But then we realized that if we take a parent that's in an underserved community, under-resourced community, and take them from low income to no income to a job paying $55,000, $65,000 a year, the first thing they're going to do is leave that community because that community lacks the resources and the amenities that they need. So what we understood was we needed to do something about the businesses that existed in those communities and help to build them up so that simultaneously we were giving families disposable income, but then also so they can support those businesses, but those businesses needed support. So in January of this year, we launched the Russell Technology and Business Incubator to support Black and brown businesses in those communities with pretty much everything that they needed to be successful. And so we call that building the community from within. We've created this ecosystem where we take care of the kids, the families, and the community. So I'm going to get right into the storytelling. So there is a person that I promised I would not call that person out that took the class, so I'm not, because otherwise she's going to beat me up. She would beat me up. She promised to beat me up, so I'm not going to do that. So what people think about this storytelling class is not actually what this storytelling class is. So we can go to the next slide. It's really about honesty, integrity, and truth. And I'm just going to read this because I know the time. First thing I want to do is, for the folks in the room, and I'm not going to call on the person that's already been in the class, I'll ask people that haven't been in the class yet, if you would tell me who you are and what you enjoy most about your job, and I'll just repeat that for those that online that can't hear it. So who's going to be the first volunteer? And those online, you can put that in the chat too, but yes, sir.
The question is who I am and what I like.
Yes, sir, yes. So Matt likes to influence outcomes. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I came with the Community Foundation of Louisville, and what I like most about my job is knowing that I'm making an impact in the community by supporting Hanover's philanthropy goals.
All right, and just one more person. One more person. Yes, Chris.
Chris Head, Salvation Army, and what I like best about my job is knowing that I'm making a difference to people.
Now check this out. None of these three people said what I like about my job is raising money, right? Because that's not the important thing. That's really not. Like Tawanda, I always mess her name up. Tawanda said to us one time in an article that it's really about connecting people to resources. So I'm going to just kind of read this just to keep on track so I don't go over. So you have to be honest. I'm talking honesty, integrity, and truth. So the idea is that you need to be honest about what you're doing. So you have to ask yourself a few questions. Does what you're trying to get folks to give to or be a part of have real value? The next question you should be asking yourself, is it a real solution to a real problem? Because, and the reason I ask that question is because a lot of times we have programs that are just simply Band-Aids. They are intended to be temporary, but we act as if they're supposed to be around forever. Think about it. A food pantry is not necessary for someone that has the resources to go and get food for themselves, right? That's a shelter is not necessary for someone who has a home. So all these things are intended to be temporary, but we treat them as if they're supposed to be around forever. And here's the big one. Do you sincerely care about what you want to make me care about? And that's where the honesty and integrity comes in. So when I was taking a class at Harvard University to get my nonprofit executive leadership certificate, I took a class called Creating Public Value. At the very beginning of that course, the question was asked, does your nonprofit have value? It forced me to look very hard at my programs and ask myself, does the work that my organization do make any sort of difference to the people that we serve? So here's the question. Are you telling a fairy tale or a for real tale? Think about that, fairy tale or a for real tale. A fairy tale is defined as a story, usually for children, about elves, hobgoblins, dragons, fairies, or other magical creatures. It's also defined as an incredible or misleading statement, account, or belief, a fantastical story that usually has a happy ending or seemingly impossible triumph. A for real tale can have happy ending and involve great triumph, but it can also be a tale of tragedy and defeat. For a real tale is centered in the truth. It is centered in honesty. A for real tale comes at a cost. Pardon me, let's switch pages here. A for real tale comes at a cost to the listener because it compels them to act or give. A poorly told or poorly communicated for real tale comes at a cost to the storyteller because your audience is moved to action, or more importantly, they're not connected to your mission, and that's what fundraising is also about. And so, again, Tawanda Lewis-Owsley of Hospice Health VP of Development said in an interview that fundraising is not just about raising money, it's also about connecting people to missions. Most of the people who attend my class of storytelling think that they are going to receive some sort of formula or step-by-step method on how to convince people to give of their time, talent, and treasures, when in fact, effective storytelling is rooted in the truth. The truth begins with a consistent narrative, a message that does not change, that is easily remembered, and can be safely embraced. You know what else? It can be retold accurately by the people that hear it. A lie or a fairy tale can also be retold, but it's seldom ever told the same way. So ask yourself, do you believe what you are trying to get other people to believe and respond to? Ask yourself, do you sincerely care about what you are trying to get others to care about? In 2020, during the onset of the pandemic and amidst racial unrest from the murder of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and others, AMP was able to raise over $3 million in just under 9 months. Our story was rooted in the tragic truth of inequality. More importantly, it outlined a real solution to those inequalities. Even more importantly, it was wrapped in the truth, and I care deeply about what we do. Now, I have good news for those, I have good news to someone. Look at this. I have good news for someone, and that is you can raise lots of money with a lie and a mission that you don't care about. But I can't imagine that it could ever be as rewarding as the truth, and it certainly won't stand the test of time. Can you go to the next slide? Or am I going to the next slide? Because we're going to do a little, let me see, can I do that? Oh, there we go, okay. Okay, we already did that. All right, so here's the exercise, and hopefully you guys can do this online, you can do this in the room. In 10 words or less, tell us what your mission is in your own words, not what's written on your website or in your brochures or whatever. In 10 words, tell us what in your own words what your mission is. We're going to call on.
Right now?
Yes. Yes.
So not my mission statement.
Not your mission statement, in your own words. And this is important. And the reason I ask this question is because we know what the mission is. You can probably rip that off, right? Like the word for word, you can tell what the mission is. But this forces you to ask yourself, what does that mission mean to you? So in 10 words, not to put you on the spot, but I am. Go.
So our mission is connecting our community to the resources they need when they need them.
Okay. All right, sir.
Bring musical experiences to all citizens.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
To bring musical experiences to all citizens of Louisville.
Okay. One more person.
Engaging youth of Kentucky to be civic-minded service leaders and to broaden their frame of reference.
Okay, so check this out. What I always wonder is when we do that, right, do we feel that? Do we feel it? Like when I ask those questions, what people typically, there's a quote, and I can't remember who it's by, but it said that I found that people took me more seriously and believed more of what I was saying when I said what I thought versus what I thought they wanted to hear. And so we tend to do in fundraising is we tell people what we think they want to hear. And actually, with the thing that people can connect to more is what you really mean. Though you can't fake that emotion. You've ever seen somebody, and this is hilarious to me, somebody that is like visibly upset, tears running, like they're like, that was an ugly face. But anyway, they're doing all the stuff, right? And you still don't believe them. Because there's no real emotion there. And so when I ask that question, I always want people to think about when I'm telling the story, ask yourself, and this is, we go back to the honesty and understanding whether it's because those people that we serve are capable. They lack resources. And you know what I'm saying? So like I bring them to tears because I'm like, they don't have the things they need to be who I know that they can be, so they can be independent of us. So that's important. Can we go to, let me go to the next slide. Let's see. Okay. So organic or transactional, keep me on track, Chris, with time. Okay. So organic or transactional relationships. This is the other thing, which again, honesty, right? So if you've ever been to our building, the new incubator that we have, we've got this board, and I actually stole the idea from Stephen Riley over at the Speed Art Museum. We have this board. It's a wall with like these names of different donors and people that have contributed to our program, anywhere from like 20 to 50,000 to $500,000, whatever. So they're on the wall. And what I can proudly say about the people on that wall is that every one of those organizations, I have a friend that I talked to before we even built that incubator, right? That I knew that was a friend of mine that I created a relationship with, and then some several years later, I called on them for the support, and they were there, and they were there in a big way. That's the difference between organic and a transactional relationship. I just don't like transactional relationships. That's why, and for all you people that love networking, I mean, that's great, do that. I don't like it because it feels like you walk into a room and people are trying to figure out like how deep your pockets are, how much you have. And I was at a fundraising, an event in actually Denver, and there was it was an event for people that give money, like the philanthropists and foundations stuff. They had a meeting. I wasn't even supposed to be there. Like I don't know how I ended up in that room. But anyway, so they're talking about how much they hate going to events because folks like us are in that room looking at them like they're like the best taco ever. I mean, like with all the cheese, all the meat, all the toppings, and so you think about like if you walk into the room saying to yourself, I'm in here to help. I'm coming to see what I can give versus what I can get. That has longevity. Those are relationships and people look. Here's the beautiful thing about an organic relationship, or even when you talk about like sort of a friendship, is that there are people out there right now as we speak, and I know this, and I can say this with great certainty, speaking on my behalf right now. Somebody's saying something to somebody else about Dave and this organization and what we're doing. Because they know I care about what I'm doing, I care about them, and they care about me, and they want to see us do good. So it says, how honest, like the next one says, how honest are you willing to be? Because you may discover, sadly, that the program that you're trying to get people to get money for sucks. Like it has no real value. Like, you're doing some stuff that just keeps people in this sort of cycle. I tell people in our programs, I want our program to be the last program you ever have to go to. And I don't want you to come back. I love you, but I don't want you to come back. I want you to be able to go out and do what you need to do, right? And then, so how valuable is your mission, really? I mean, and I have the word really, because that's what the kids, really, how valuable is your mission? I mean, you think about, and I won't go through some stuff that I've seen people raising money for, but I don't know. I mean, and get this, I don't get to say what's valuable. You have to determine whether what you have is valuable or not. And then, who cares and why should they? Because we want to go out to, and you're talking about storytelling. Storytelling is important to the audience that you're telling it to. Here's the beautiful thing about the truth. It doesn't matter the audience, it's still the truth. And somebody in that audience, I don't care what that audience is, will connect to the truth. And so and the reason I say that, I have that and so this thing is that we tend to want to tell a different story based on who we're telling it to. And I get this, and I've been, the DeVos Institute of Arts Management, they taught us, okay, you have to know your person, and people connect in different ways. I get that. They connect in different ways. Say, some people want the notoriety of being a part of an organization. Some people want to be involved or be around people. Some people want to say that they did it. I get that. But the bottom line is the mission is the mission is the mission is the mission. And it needs to be rooted in the truth. The way you present it may be a little different. You may make sure I make sure that I tell that person that cares about being around, celebrities or whatever, that, hey, guess what? So-and-so is going to be there. Yes, do that, and that's the truth, but the mission stays the same, right? When you accept, and this, I'm not going to do that this year again. Hopefully you can do that in the chat, and I don't know if somebody can read those off to me because I don't see the chat, but it says, when you accept a position where you are now, was it simply because you needed a job, or that job paid you well, or you weren't sure what you wanted to do, so you did this? And what's crazy is, I don't know, you guys are the Association of Fundraising Professionals. You probably know people that just, oh, well, it was a job. And it paid well, and I took it. I guess that's okay. I mean, you guys tell me if it's okay. By a show of hands, is that okay? Nobody? Nobody? Nobody believes that it's okay to just take the job?
I'd say not for transformational change in the nonprofit sector.
Bingo. I wish I had a gift card or something, but yeah, exactly. But not for transformation. And so that's a really, because that's a lot of letters in a word. Transformational change. That's big. That's not a Band-Aid solution. Transformational change means just that something changed in a big way. And so I went from unemployed to employed. I went from assistance to not assistance. I went from hungry to not hungry. And not temporarily not hungry, but consistently hungry. I mean, well, I'm always consistently hungry. Consistently not hungry, right? So you have to be honest with yourself, why? And here's the thing. I don't get to tell somebody, don't take a job unless you really mean it. But think about the organizations that you're doing this stuff for, this work for, and the people that are affected by you just taking a job because you didn't know what else you wanted to do. That's, I don't know, contributing to, I don't know. Anyway. Okay, so what's your story? The only way that you can effectively tell your story is that if you understand everything about it. As a fundraising professional, you can get all the numbers in the world, all the metrics and all the data and all those things, right? And if you don't understand the core of what you're doing, why you're doing it, all of those numbers will only be beneficial to those people, those organizations that, here's one, so that only care about charity and not justice. Numbers matter to people that care about charity because they like numbers. They want to know that you took $10,000 and served 1,000 people. They don't care if those 1,000 people got anything. That's charity. Justice is you got, what did I say? What number did I say? 10,000? What did I say? $10,000 and you served 10 people and those 10 people are now forever changed. That's justice. And so just to go off on a little bit of a tirade in terms of how funders think, right? is that we need to work on how funders and philanthropists look at how they give. Because and I know this is true, I'm not making this up, nonprofit is a business. It's a business that requires all the things that businesses require. People, paid people, right? Marketing, all those things. So, but if you're telling this story, this sort of this mechanical thing, then they just keep doing that mechanical thing. And so, make sure you're telling your story. And so I think that's, I don't know if I use all the time, but that. Okay, so I guess what I want to say then is that does anybody have any questions about anything that I've said thus far? Any questions in the chat? Because I can go on and on about like funders and.
So I hesitate to ask this question because it doesn't pertain to me.
Okay.
Like pulling it from your material. So you hit somebody's heartstrings out there today, and they said, you know what, I did just take this job because I needed a job. What can they do now?
So yeah, that's a great question because so you're in the job and hopefully what happened is just like you said that your heartstrings are there, because it's not a bad thing to necessarily to go into the job because I needed a job. That's a real thing, right? That's reality. But hopefully you got in there and you saw how important what you were doing or what you were supposed to be doing is. And then, so now you then try to understand, like, how do I then shift from this, like, I just came in for a job to, like, how do I make this? Because I think even telling a story, like, as a fundraiser, and so I'm the executive director, but I'm sort of a fundraiser, if you will, like, right? So I literally want to sit down with the kids. I mean, like, I'm in regular contact with our kids and our parents and those things. And I'm not saying everybody has that kind of time, but I think it's important that you not sit in an office reading off numbers and grabbing these sort of, and here's another thing, those anecdotal stories or whatever. The other thing is, I had posted the other day, don't use a lie as leverage. And what I meant by that is don't make promises to funders and philanthropists that you know you can't keep. And that goes back to that, like, I'm gonna serve 1,000 people with $10,000. I had probably like maybe 2 or 3 weekends ago, I don't know if you guys know who Jeffrey Canada is from the Harlem Children's Zone. And it's probably been about 10 years ago that he formed the Harlem Children's Zone in Harlem, New York. And what he did was he took a citywide block and made it a safe zone in that community, right? And now it's like 6 or 7 blocks. And he guaranteed that 100% of his students would graduate from high school, 100% of his students would graduate from college. And so when he first came up with the idea, a friend of his who was also a philanthropist asked him, said, hey, that's great work. I would love to help you with that, be involved in that. And she said, well, put together a budget. Put together a budget and come back to me and let's see what we can do. So he put together a budget. The budget was $400,000. So he came back to her and he was like, okay, here's the budget. And she was like, $400,000. Okay, so you're going to guarantee me that you can graduate all these kids from high school and all these kids from college for $400,000. He's like, well, no, you know what? Let me give you that back. So he took it back, did it again, came back with $1 million. She asked the same question. Can you guarantee me that you can do this with $1 million? No, you're right. Okay, pulled it back, $5 million, then $10 million. Still, he couldn't guarantee it. He finally came back with a budget for $50 million. And then she asked me, well, how are you going to come up with $50 million? Because he was like, I thought you were going to give it to me. But anyway, but they did. They came up with $50 million. But guess what? 100% high school graduation rate, 100% college graduation rate. Minus any kids, of course, sadly, that die. I mean, stuff that happens, right? Minus that. But all the kids that get into the program, to the point that there's a public school and there's a lottery to get into it. Like, it's that big a demand. So I said all that to say that if you don't understand, when you took to your question, if you don't understand what the real need is for what you're doing and understand the need for transformational change, right, then even once you discover that your heartstrings are pulled doesn't mean that you're going to do anything differently. You still may go through these paces and just keep doing what you're doing. So, did I answer your question? Hopefully I did. Yeah. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So, do you all write grants? Then how do you go about your storytelling when you do?
The truth. I mean, yeah, so yes. I know,
What have you had success in? I mean, I know the truth, but I guess grant writing is difficult when every nonprofit is writing a grant to every foundation. I guess is my question. What have you found has been your success with those?
So we go to the story with Jeffrey Canada, is that here's what the problem is. Here's what the real problem is. And that's the other thing. You have to understand, like, when we talk about, like, does your organization have value or does your mission have value, is it really solving a problem? And so if it's really solving a problem, then you would hope, at least it's been our success, that funders believe that this is a real solution to a real problem and not something we got to come back to. Like, we got to keep feeding, right, that we can fix it. So when we write grants, we're doing deep thought about, like, what really fixes. So, for example, I'll give you an example, like just our technology workforce development program. So we ask people with no income or low income to come sit in a room 5 days a week, 8 hours a day for 3 to 6 months, right, depending on the program, 3 to 6 months, in hopes that they'll get something on the other end. That doesn't work. So what we did was we said, okay, let's get with employers and get them to guarantee those jobs when it's done. And so now I can go ask for money that says, I'm going to get these people to sit here. Now, here's the other thing that we do. We pay them to sit there. Like, we pay them $15 an hour plus free medical for that time they're going through the training. And then at the end, there's a job. You know what I'm saying? So, like, coming up with solutions, not Band-Aids. That's what I talk about all the time, is that we tend to want to, like, and I think it's sadly, and I'm not saying, if you're that person, whatever, but sadly, I think we sometimes takes joy in continuously helping the same people. Like, we sleep better. It's like, oh, I helped these people, these kids today, these poor kids. No, not really. Like, they didn't really, there was the same kids going through the same stuff, and then you take pictures, right? That's like, people get notorious for taking pictures of something that never even happened. Like, if I have a technology program for youth, I take a picture of all the kids sitting at computers and, whatever, and I put it out there, and I hope that funders will, like, oh, I'm giving them money so you can have kids sit in front of computers. Because that's all you really did. So to answer your question, we write grants about, so here's something that somebody said to me one time. It was actually Dr. Dorian Burton. He used to work for Keenan Charitable Trust. And he wrote an article, and in the article he said, the problem with telling people that people are broken and that you're going to fix them is that they give you money and you don't fix them, they don't give you any more money because you didn't fix them. Or you fix them and they don't give you any more money because you fixed them. But if you start with these people are capable, right? These folks that we serve are capable, and all we need to give them is the resources so they can be capable. There'll never be shortage of need. Like, there's no organization in here or online that's dealing with an issue, at least I don't think so, dealing with an issue that's going to go away tomorrow. Period. You're not. So there'll always be a need. So we got to get away from being afraid of telling the truth and solving the problem. Because I was at a conference in Denver, Colorado some years ago, and it was an out-of-school time program, and it was crazy. I'm in a room with about 100 people, and in that room, we're talking about the quality of out-of-school time program for African-American students. Here's what's funny about that room. That room was 85% white women. There was a couple white men, one Hispanic man, and me and another guy, the only 2 black people in that room. But you're having a conversation about quality out-of-school time programming for African-American students. And, because I'm sometimes not the nicest person, I stood up and brought attention to that. I said, and I don't mean any harm, but look around this room. How many of you really know what the problem is? You know what, like, we have the same, we talk about the same thing, we talk about transportation and, like, food and, like, all those things, and that's all true. But if you take care of the real problem, which is the real root, which is poverty, right, then we can fix a lot of things. And so those, and also I was probably at that time was the only person not being paid to be there. I mean, and so what the question I asked in that room was, what motivation do you have to solve the problem? Because if you solve the problem, then you're out of work. And we hear people say all the time, oh, well, I want to put myself out of work. No, you don't. Like, you don't. I guess you don't. But here's the thing. You're not anyway. If you solve the problem, you're not going to put yourself out of work because there'll always be a need. So, again, I ramble. I don't know if I answered the question. Hopefully I did. Did I? Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Dave, what happens when your story has to change? Like when you start with a certain problem that you're really working on, but then another problem presents itself and really relates to what your organization is doing?
So great, yeah. So we had that same situation, right? Because remember, we started as a free music program for kids, right? And so this is the other thing. I have another presentation I do about not being afraid of mission drift, because it's not actually mission drift. These things are connected. The thing I said earlier about there's no, and I actually learned that from Sharon Darling of the National Center for Family Learning in an orientation that she did, where she said there's no such thing as a child in poverty that doesn't live with a parent in poverty. So here's the crazy thing that we do. We do all this work for this kid as if they have no parents. Why wouldn't we then work with the parents? Because now mind you, I had this fight with my board. My board, like, dude, like, let's do one thing well. I was like, yeah, we are. That's community. We're doing community well. But we get stuck in this thing, like, we can't go to the thing that is like logically connected to that thing. So of course, kids are connected to their parents. The parents are struggling because they don't have jobs. So let's get them jobs. Now the parents have jobs, they're in a community that doesn't have resources. So if we give them jobs and they move out of that community, then we basically work to destroy that community, because we basically had everybody abandon that community. So what I would say to answer your question is, don't be afraid to look wider, because the solution, you have a Band-Aid here. The solution may be out here. It may be further out. But you got to care enough about that. You got to care enough about, you have to be, like it took I don't know, like a year and a half, honestly, I mean, for me, like a year and a half for me to realize that every time our kids went away and came back, it was like we were starting over. And we didn't quite understand like what was going on. We were like, oh, because they're going to homes where the parents are struggling. We just had a tragic thing happen just this morning. I don't know if you guys heard about it. It was a shooting at a bus stop. I know at least one of the kids is dead, and I think it's two other kids that are in the hospital, right? And so what we do, and this is another sort of rant, okay? So what we do is we vilify those parents that are on a job out there, and really have struggled so long that they gave up, and we vilify those parents because those kids do the things that they do. But if we solve the problem for real, as opposed to putting Band-Aids on it, some of that, if not all of that, wouldn't exist, right? Because that parent if that parent didn't have to work or just hadn't got off a late shift and trusted to send their kids to the bus stop by themselves or whatever, and was like, when I took my daughter to the bus stop, I drove to the bus stop, sat there with her while she got on the bus, everything was good, right? And I'm sure you guys probably have the same experience. But that's not the same experience for everybody else. So to answer your question is, don't be afraid of looking at the thing that may solve the problem. Because just working with the kids didn't necessarily solve the problem. Because now those parents are set up, because I'm not their savior. We have to get out of that mentality too, like we're these saviors and we can just come in and like swoop in and like save people. No, we can come in and do some stuff, but like they're gonna, if you're not trying to make transformation, I'm gonna keep using that like that transformational change, then it doesn't matter. Anyone else? Any other questions? Cool. Okay. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate you. My email address is on there. My website is on there. Would love if you have any questions or anything, you need anything from me, I'm happy to do it. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you guys for coming out today. Dave, thank you so much for making us think about our story and what the truth is. I'm sitting here thinking about mine, I know that. So we are gonna have, in October, all of our programs for the rest of the year will be virtual. So in October, we have a virtual program, regular monthly meeting. Then we're also gonna have a diversity event that will also be virtual. So you'll see more information about that coming out here in the next week or so. And then we will be in person for National Philanthropy Day in November. So I welcome you guys to join those programs as well, and thank you for your time today. Have a wonderful day.